So thank you very much for your business. It was a pleasure meeting you all today. A couple of things. One is that this is the unedited version. It's unlisted, so YouTube has a listing service, so you can either click on list or unlist. So I don't want it to be seen by the general public, not least because it would be extremely boring for anyone that wasn't involved with it. But I don't have control over what YouTube do, but I can see if the number of people that see it. So, it should be fine, but I'm not YouTube. So if you can send the data logger, the updates from the data logger, and within the survey, I should show you how to do that. And if you can send that, not this weekend, but the following weekend, so 22nd, 23rd of March. If you don't do it, then please do it as soon as possible. I do everything in order and I wait for the data loggers to come through. So obviously it will delay it if you don't. It's better to send it earlier than later. The other thing is, then the final report will be, so I'm going to send a link with information with this report. That's in draft form, so I may change the wording, but it will be as an email attachment, and then within the details within the YouTube, which will be sent so that anyone can read it and understand it, or listen to it, should I say, and understand it. The details will contain links through to recommendations, but it's primarily in the video. So have a look now. I'm sorry if it rambles a bit. What is as I say, I can start to reach conclusions before I'm actually, this is consider it to be like a draft conclusion. But when we're looking here, where you've got brown staining, that's an indication of water passing through building material, which suggests that there's penetrating damp. But I'll have a closer look inside and outside on that one. Where you've got mould growing. This is where the persistent problem is here. Where you've got mould, so the interesting thing is you don't get mould where you get hygroscopic salts, because hygroscopic salts contain calcium nitrate's the most common one, and it's like normal table salt. What it does is it removes vapor from air, so it causes damp-like symptoms, and you get it around old chimney breast, but you don't have mould associated with it. We only get mould where you get high surface relative humidity, which comes from excess vapor, and it's a combination of two factors. The primary factor is the excess vapor, so the time it takes to dry out the bathroom. And I'll check the fans and just see what's happening there. The secondary cause is heat loss, because surface or relative humidity is a measure of vapor's ability to hold moisture. So the warmer it is, the more vapor you can hold. Conversely, the colder it is, the less you can hold, until you get to what's called the dew point. And the dew point, a high dew point, means that much more vapor in the air and much more vulnerability to vapor. And so primary issues the vapor, the secondary issues the heat loss, and what you probably find is an old chimney breast that was here that's been removed. I'm guessing, I don't know, I'll have a look at it. Sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge for me when I've got the people that install things around, sort of, because I might sound like I'm criticizing them, but it's not really that. It's just teamwork to get things to work. And time is, most extractor fans are badly set up. The factory default's normally too short, and you should have half an hour. And if you've got tenants, they'll probably want to have as little time as possible, because they're concerned more about the noise and so on. So anyway, I'll test it, and if there's an opportunity to extend the fan, I will do, because I think it's a combination of speed and the length of time that it's running for, and also doors. So you've got this type of door. Well, any door, there's a vulnerability to people keeping them open. Mind you, you've got the condensation and the mold inside, so it's less relevant. But to landlords, I say to them, put on a spring-loaded hinge to encourage tenants to keep the doors closed. anyway, because of where the mold's growing, I'm going to be recommending that you put some insulation, and the easiest one to use is thermal lining paper. It's quite inexpensive, and you know it'll take somebody a couple of hours to install it, but and then that just gives you an extra couple of degrees freedom, you know, degree centigrade, and you know it just reduces the risk.
It's cold on the outside and warm on the inside, so you get mold.
Well, you only ever get mold where you got high surface relative humidity, and relative humidity is not just the amount of vapor in air, but the temperature as well. So, funnily enough, it's not just in cold countries that they get mold. So, mold you get in Hong Kong is an area that you get a lot of mold. That's because there's lots of vapor, and you know, it's a relative temperature rather than an absolute temperature. If that makes sense. So you know where I'm coming from. But an air vent, these are called passive air vents, and you only get benefit from them when there's airflow on the outside, so there's a bit of wind on the outside. Otherwise they just cause heat loss, and that will increase the heat loss and therefore the surface relative humidity around there, because it would. So actually, I hate to say this, but counterproductive.
Okay.
Really, you want insulation, you want to reduce the heat in here, but I mean, replacing this might well have gone a long way to solving the problem. But I'm going to use the data loggers. I'm going to put one in the bathroom, one in the bedroom, and we'll just see what's happening. I'm going to say, I don't think this is penetrating damp. I think it is damp. I'll have a look on the outside, but
that appeared well after this, so I think it's a separate problem.
Yeah. So this is a thermal imaging camera.
Okay.
And I'm going to use this to work out the surface temperature of that, but this is showing 13.6 degrees centigrade at the moment compared to internal temperature of 18, so 19, so there's 6 degrees centigrade, and so for each 1 degree centigrade drop in temperature you get an increase, and you see how, interestingly enough, it's actually warmer there, but that's because it's relatively warm outside. This wall actually is not as cold. It's going down to 16.8. Right in the corner at the top, let's see if I can get it. Yeah, so it's not as cold there. So video, but with the greatest respect to tenants, they act differently to homeowners.
Yeah.
And they see ventilation and noise as a cost to them, or at least they see the air flowing out that they've heated as a cost to them, whereas an owner-occupier will just see it as good ventilation that's necessary. So when you've got two sets of lights where you can just as easily have the one on that doesn't connect to the fan, there will be a temptation for tenants, particularly for last thing at night, not to switch the one with the fan on, which means that the worst time of day. But it's sort of to know about, and I think sensors, data loggers is a really good way of working with that, because then it tells you whether things are being ventilated properly, because you'll see a change in the vapor levels. What I think I'll do is I'll ask the tenants to just leave them, and I'll give you some recommendations in a week's time, and if you can ask them to put through those recommendations initially, just on the vapor control side, and then we can see if there's an improvement in the vapor at that stage. The temperature starts to be warmer during the day. So in March, April, and then similarly in October, November, when it's relatively warm during the day but still can be very cold at night, a lot of people won't have the heating on, and so you can have this sort of twin effect of having no heating, so low temperature at night and therefore high surface relative humidity, but then no insufficient ventilation and airflow that you would normally get in summertime, and long nights and short days.
Yeah.
So this time of year, the shoulder months are often the worst time for mould and condensation, which is the primary issue that you've got there and possibly there. I would expect to see more brown staining if it were penetrating from the outside. It should be 15 and I can only do half, so it should be fine. It was put on 5 weeks ago, did you say? Roughly, give or take. Yeah. So you've got mould here, and you get mould because of high surface relative humidity. You often get it where you're getting condensation, and this wall is wet and almost certainly from condensation, but there could be some penetrating damp, so we will look on the outside. So sometimes if you put an anti-stain block, or stain block should I say, it can stop the brown staining, but still you get cold, moist bricks that are poor insulator and therefore heat loss, so increasing the mould. I mean, there's mould up here as well, and what I would suggest is you need to get some HG anti-mould spray. You've got it here as well. And so always when you've got excess vapour, when you've got mould, you've got excess vapour and made worse by heat loss, but it's the vapour's the issue. A measure of the amount of vapour in air can be expressed in many different ways. You can express it as grams per cubic metre, you can express it as vapour pressure, but you can also express it in degrees centigrade as the dew point. So the dew point is the temperature where condensation takes place at, but it's also the an expression of the amount of vapour in air, and you can look at dew point differential or the difference between one dew point and another, and it tells you if there's more vapour in one room compared to another room. By doing that, you know where the vapour source is. So is the vapour source in the bedroom or the bathroom? Likewise, so there's something called Dew's law, which is that you should always try and keep the internal dew point below the outside temperature. And the reason why that's important is twofold. One is the vapour outside, the dew point of the air outside can never be greater than the outside temperature, because otherwise it would rain. And in fact, rain is condensation, and when it's raining, the dew point is the outside temperature and it's 100% relative humidity. So when you're ventilating, you're blowing the internal vapour out with the internal air with the internal vapour, and you're replacing it with outside air with the outside vapour. So in humid countries like the one we live in, the external vapour is quite high for much of the year, and so you actually don't get a particularly good extraction rate or replacement rate because of that. So you need to have it on for longer. So some people that from drier countries really struggle to understand our ventilation systems, including Ukraine and US and so on. So that's number one. Number two is in most properties there is somewhere that's going to have an internal temperature that's similar to the external temperature through insulation or because there's ducting, so like that hole there, because there's a cold water pipe, so cold water comes in winter at about 8 degrees centigrade. Sometimes it can go even lower than that, but it very rarely freezes, but obviously. So, and then cabling, as I said, ducting or what are called thermal bridges. That's areas where there's unexpected heat loss. So often if there's a old chimney breast that's been filled in, you can get a lot of heat loss because the chimney is made of, so a normal wall is made from 2 bricks side by side, but with a chimney you open it up and you have a flue in the middle, which is a void, and so you often get heat loss around chimney breasts. So I'll have a look at that to understand if there's a specific reason, but it's always the vapor is always the primary cause, and the secondary cause is the heat loss. But yeah, so
we should basically
insulate that.
Put that,
H-
close off that vent.
You want to get rid of the mold, so I'd use HG anti-mold spray, which is bleach, is the active ingredient. I would put in insulation, and you can even think about putting anti-mold paint on it, or anti-condensation paint. But I would say the insulation would do it, and I personally wouldn't have the passive vent. I'd fill it in.
Fill it in, right?
I'd fill it in with because you don't want to lose. I mean, if you just block it up, then you've got worse of both worlds, because you get the heat loss without the ventilation. So when you're doing it here, I mean, so the internal air is going to be, so the vent is going to be moving from the outside to the inside. So in some respects, it's great, but it's not actually drawing it in from the other rooms.
Right.
So it's not creating airflow throughout the property, which is what you want. Do you have an extraction fan in the kitchen downstairs? Was it? It's like a recycling one, because vapor moves. So vapor moves through diffusion, so like smoke, but it also moves through. It moves through air currents, but it's H2O having only one oxygen compared to O2, which is 2 oxygens, is lighter than oxygen and most air. So it will rise, which is why you get clouds above the earth. So the vapor generated downstairs will move upstairs.
Okay.
Do you know what they do for drying clothes? Well, I can ask them anyway.
I think it's a vented dryer in the basement.
Okay, I can have a look. Yeah, but you find a lot of people do dry their clothes internally, and then you've got drying towels and all
Well, that
that
was
stuff.
more humid,
Yeah. So I'll have a look at that. I'll have a look on the outside. Are these guys?
They're here.
They're,
so
they're
you
sh-
can just-
and then I'll look in the loft as well. Yeah, so you've that metal there, and then you've got various factors. I'll have a better look at it. I can look from. I wouldn't mind going up
Point
another.
out the flashing is not in, so that's probably. We need to redo the flashing.
Yeah. If the wind, if rain was being blown in from there, it would just get in underneath. But I don't think that's your primary root cause. But it's definitely an issue, so it should be folded over. Typically, the reason that they darken is because moisture. So hygroscopic salts, like sodium chloride, i.e., normal table salt, it causes what's called deliquescence, which is a form of condensation, but at normal levels of relative humidity. But if you go into a warm, humid country, including in Italy, they'll put in rice into the salt cellars to try and stop it. Rice will clump up, the old Saxo salt. But nowadays they add ingredients to table salts. That's why everyone prefers sea salt and so on. But anyway, what happens is that it causes moisture on the outside, which causes the soot to stick more readily, and that's why if you look at Downing Street, the outside of Downing Street, you can see that they painted it black to try and hide the hygroscopic salts on it. But anyway, so that's but this pointing is probably, I know is it in your time or is it?
Yeah, it's probably 20 years ago.
I would wonder if it's been done a couple of times actually.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
But so that has come through. So modern day pointing is with a high level of cement in it, which is there are pros and cons. I won't go into too much detail on that, but the moisture has obviously come through that.
Coming through here.
Yeah, but it's nothing to be worried about. It's not a source of water. It's in dynamic equilibrium, so it's constantly evaporating and condensing at the same rate.
Okay.
So it's just a phenomenon rather than a problem.
So we shouldn't be too worried that it's
No.
a bit darker.
It's an explanation for. Well,
Why
you know
it's
what?
dark.
I'm not seeing inside. I'm not seeing the issues, but it does tell me that it's probably a chimney breast here. So I'll have a better look at that.
Okay.
So yeah, you got the chimney pots there. So the way the chimneys are constructed is where you've got the two bricks that are opened up in the middle, and you've got a void in the middle. So what happens is there's zones where you get what's called thermal bridging, where you get heat loss because you've got a single brick as opposed to a double brick, so you're getting half the insulation, and so it's an explanation for why you're getting more heat loss than you would otherwise have in that zone. So if you think of the way the brick is constructed, the flue is constructed underneath, it will come down and across and then likewise over there. Yeah. So there will be a flue over there, and because it was because the wall wasn't built out like a chimney breast, what it suggests to me is that somebody has removed the chimney breast in the past. And often when they do that, they don't construct it with material that is as good an insulator. So you're prone to heat loss in those zones. And obviously just putting insulation is the simplest solution. So again, it's an explanation rather than necessarily the root cause will be the vapour
in
the bathroom, made worse by the heat loss. When it comes to kitchen ventilation, it's only as good as its usage, and a lot of people, you put in the most sophisticated extractor fan and then no one ever uses it. So as a simple rule, go for quiet over speed. Yeah. You want to have a quiet fan that is functional. Mm-hmm. One I came across this morning by AEG, really good. It has an automatic trigger from the hob to the fan. It's electrical hob. You got gas, so it may not be functional here, but because tenants quite often don't use fan even if you install them, but you're thinking longer term. Yeah. But this could be the source of the vapour. Okay. Do you know where they dry clothes? Is it downstairs? Do you have? Is there a bathroom downstairs as well? Yeah. So you presumably have a similar issues. Have you got mould down there or no? But then you may have insulation that's hiding the problem rather than necessarily removing it. Even though it's on the lower floor and there's a door between the upstairs and downstairs, and therefore vapour probably doesn't move as much. You just have to remember that mold moves through vapour moves through diffusion, and it will find its way up. So I noticed there's no extractor fan that comes on here. There's an extractor fan is there. Yeah. It's manual, so you actually have to. You're getting quite a lot of water. You have to manually turn it on. So I discourage landlords from having manual fans.
Should really connect it up.
Yeah, Data loggers are going to tell us a lot, and also I think have you provided a dehumidifier, or do they use one?
Sometimes I think, yeah.
20 meter plus dehumidifier is what you want. 20 litre per day.
Yeah, I think it's
As
that's effective.
so it's vented. Okay, yeah. That should be okay, but I mean, it looks fine. Sometimes they crack and they lose vapor through the ducting, but it seems to be. So you got I can't see the name, but anyway. So the old vent is just sitting in the loft doing nothing, but you should really, I would just put something, I'll try and do something. And then this vent goes all the way out, and I presume it's going up through one through the vent ducts. It's your chimney breast, and there's this, the steel's going to be part of it. Mind you, it's got insulation around it, which is good. I wouldn't worry about the damp there. That's almost certainly going to be hygroscopic salts. You can see them. I don't think it's I don't think it will tell you anything. You've got an air vent there, which is good for a bit of through ventilation. There's presumably what we could see.
That's the model pump.
For the vent. It's going out through there, which is great. Good bit of insulation missing in places, but I don't think that's too much to worry about. And you got double thickness ventilation, insulation, which is good. Yeah, I think that's fine. Oh, interesting. The old wall.
Yeah, there was
This is a double thickness wall.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when you have a chimney breast, you open it out and you get a void in the middle, and so you've got a single thickness, which is why you can get a risk of heat loss and mold. So it's a separate issue, but because the extractor fan ducting is using one of the vents, you've actually only appear to have two, although you may have, I can't remember, maybe you had three. But anyway, what you really ideally should have is through flow of air, ideally from front to back, and you have it higher up rather than lower down. And you can see that there is mold up here. When you've got, so this is what's called sarking material. This is bitumen sarking material, and in modern day roof you have a vapor permeable material, which allows air flow through. So it means you can get a build-up of humidity but with ventilation, obviously that's getting rid of that, but because you've only got a single one, you're not getting the through flow, where it looks like you've only got a single one. I'll double check on that. So it's something to flag. It's not related to the other issues, but it's just to say, and you could put in a data logger in the loft to see whether you are having a problem. I mean, the one thing I would say is that so long as you're not getting dampness, you don't have to worry about the occasional condensation mold area, particularly if it's in the loft. You know, everyone has a bit of issues here and there. It's whether when it gets out of hand that there's the problem. So I'm putting the other data logger over here. This is difference between that.
Okay, got the next one.
So, and then